Have you ever gone to a used car salesman trying to buy a car, or really any salesman for that, and they try to give you their spiel, and they'll kind of give you a version of facts, and they'll tell you some things that they'd like for it to be true, but then subsequently you found out, well, you gave me a little selective information there. You do your own Google searches, whatever, and you find out, well, yeah, that may be true, but you didn't tell me any of these other things, which gives a very slanted view of the product that he's trying to sell you. Well, some version of that happened on Capitol Hill yesterday when a Senator Tom Cotton was grilling Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. And it turns out, really, both of them were engaged in a lot of selective information and leaving out certain facts and making some really horrible analogies, all to try and give an incorrect impression. Well, because we here at Deep Dive exist to clear up those kinds of things and to make sure that you have the truth instead of what somebody wants you to think, we're going to delve into that a little bit here. And I'm going to show you, like we always try to do here, why it matters. It's not just pointing the finger at somebody and saying, oh, they're bad, they shouldn't have done this or whatever. There's a cost to what they're trying to do. And I'm not going to let that happen on our watch. And since we're all in this together and we're in this along with you, and we're all one community here, I'm going to make sure you know the truth of it. So first of all, let's take a look at Senator Tom Cotton talking to Lloyd Austin, talking about some things that happened in World War II.
Why does Israel have a responsibility to provide aid to Gaza? Israel was the victim of an unprovoked, vicious attack on October 7th. Why should they provide aid to the aggressor nation, or aggressor? Gaza's not a nation. To the aggressors on October 7th. We didn't provide aid to Germany and Japan during World War II.
What we did provide aid to and assistance to many of the countries that we've operated in recently.
But not in World War II. If you had been in George Marshall's or Dwight Eisenhower's position in World War II, would you have wanted to provide aid to Germany?
I really do believe, Senator, that if they want to create a lasting effect and in terms of stability, then I think that something needs to be done to account to help the Palestinian people.
I get that, but they're in the middle of the war. Like we believe that too after World War II. That's why we had the Marshall Plan. That's why we rebuilt Japan. But that was after the war was won, not in the middle of it. And in the meantime, like if it's not Israel's responsibility to provide aid, it's certainly not our responsibility, but we're spending our tax dollars to build this giant pier to send aid into Gaza. Who's going to accept that aid? Who's going to be at the end of the pier on the shore taking aid from American forces?
That's still being worked out, but there will be NGOs that will help to distribute that aid.
That Hamas is in charge of Gaza. When aid goes to Gaza, Hamas doesn't divert it or commandeer it or steal it. It accepts it. And anybody operating in Gaza is under the thumb of Hamas. I just think it's very ill-considered, and I don't think it's going to end very well.
Okay, if all you knew is what you heard in that exchange right there, you may think, wow, well, Senator Cotton had some really good points there. I mean, yeah, that is true. We didn't help Germany during the war. And yeah, I mean, if Hamas is in control of everything in the Gaza Strip, then why are we helping the enemy? Only, like so many other things, there are elements of truth in what he said, but there are whole categories of things he sort of left out that are really important in that. First of all, this whole analogy with World War II completely falls apart. During the war, we were at war with Germany. Not that there was a war going on, but that we were at war with Germany. Secondly, Germany was a nation state with an armed forces, Air Force, Navy, Marine, all that kind of thing, the ground forces. And so when we went in there, of course, you're not going to provide for their people. They have the ability to do that. They fed their people. They took care of their people until the thing was literally destroyed. And as soon as we moved through, we did help the population in there. So those aren't analogous because the people in the Palestine aren't a nation state. We've prevented that. We've helped prevent that. Israel has absolutely prevented that. So they're not a nation state. They don't have a Navy. They don't have an Air Force. They don't have the ability to create their own food. They don't have a distribution system. And what they did have has been systematically destroyed by Israel. So those analogies don't work at all. Now, at least Secretary Austin there did have some compassion, and he tried to go back, and he tried to steer it back to the people that need help. Senator Cotton didn't seem to care at all about the people. And he's also blind to the fact that while we do that, while it may play well on TV here, while it may play well to some of his supporters back there who want to say, yeah, you made a good point, it doesn't do anything to our case, to help the United States case, because everybody else in the world sees this for what it is, and they recognize the absurdity with Senator Cotton's very premise. He also, showed in there that he doesn't understand about how things are actually working here. It's not as though Hamas and the Palestinians are equivalent, which he tried to make that a case there. He said Hamas is in charge of that. So why would we want to feed the enemy? Okay, again, we're not at war with Palestine. We aren't. We were at war against Germany, and yet we still help them there. But this case is even more stark because Israel is trying to make equivalency with all of the 2 million Palestinians with the behavior of those terrorists that struck on October the 7th. They're not. They are just as innocent as the people of Israel who were murdered by those Hamas terrorists. And as I've always said from day one and never said anything different, it's reasonable and just, and according to international law, that Israel has the right to go after those that killed their people, the terrorists themselves, the Hamas fighters themselves. But going in to this Palestinian enclave that they're prevented from going out, they're trapped in there. You've heard a lot of people say it's like an open air prison, because it is. They are literally physically incarcerated in that strip. They can't get out to sea and they can't get out on the land. So they are literal physical prisoners on the land. And Israel is going in just haphazardly killing tens of thousands of them, mostly women and children. And it just is, just on the surface of it, it's just disappointing to the extreme level that the absolute lack of concern, just of humanity, that Senator Cotton and all those who are like him don't have any concern at all for the Palestinian people. It's like, well, because Hamas did this and they're trapped, that they're guilty. I assure you, if they could escape, they would have done so long time ago. And I'm talking before 10/7, not just during the war. Many of them would have left and gone anywhere else where it's safe, but they don't get that choice. So yeah, it makes sense that America, who says that it's our national interest and the ethics and morals of our country to see to it that the weakest people aren't exploited by the strongest people, and that especially women and children, the most vulnerable of any society, are not taken advantage of and killed in large numbers. That should be a no-brainer. Of course, we're going to do that, because at least as many of our public officials have said, it does matter how you conduct yourselves, even in the righteous act of going after terrorists. It matters how. And just consider on the surface of it that Israel lost over 1,000 civilians on October 7th, and Palestine has lost over 33,000 civilians after this. Israel claims that some of those were Hamas fighters, and they probably were. Let's just say a third of it was that. So that means that tens of thousands of completely innocent people were killed when Israel went crazy when there was 1,000, understandably so. But why does anyone think that the Palestinian people aren't going to also be, looking for revenge when 10 to 30 times that many are killed? Obviously, it doesn't make any sense. So Cotton going down this path is trying to make this case that we shouldn't be even helping the Palestinian people. That's not going to go over well. That's not where the story is. Next, he went on and he's talking about back to the personal issue about whether or not we have anything to do with genocide. So first of all, he laid the foundation that basically the Palestinian people don't matter. And now he wants to say that it's not genocide.
Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza?
Senator Cotton, we don't have any evidence of genocide being created.
So that's a no. Israel's not committing genocide in Gaza.
We don't have evidence of that, to
Thank
my
you.
knowledge. Yeah.
Better than Director Burns and Director Haynes did last month at the Intelligence Committee when they dodged that question. You stand accused by those protesters of greenlighting genocide. Would you like to respond to that accusation?
What I would say, Senator Cotton, from the very beginning is that we committed to help assist Israel in defending its territory and its people.
So you deny the accusation that you greenlit genocide?
I absolutely do not.
Okay.
Okay, look, you can simultaneously say Israel was just under international law in defending itself against an attack by Hamas where they killed, 1,000 people. You can say that, and that Israel's actions here are violating international law when they are depriving Palestinian people of their lives. Those things can continue to exist, can coexist. So it's not like, well, because October 7th happened, everything else doesn't matter, because it does matter. And while I gave Secretary Austin a little bit of credit at the one hand for saying, sure, the Palestinian people matter, we have to get aid to them, then he just forfeited what he gained there by saying, yeah, we have no evidence of any of the genocide here. Gary, can you roll some of that footage? Just look at that. Forget about whether there's any sound or any commentary. Just look at these pictures and many others that we've been showing a lot. And you just see absolute wanton destruction. They have destroyed the Israelis have of an entire way of life. So they have destroyed the capacity for the Gaza Strip to even maintain life. And we're talking about nearly all the hospitals have been wiped out. All the universities have been destroyed. Cultural centers, water distribution possessions, electric generation capacity, everything that is needed for life is being systematically wiped out. And of course, I think 60% of the living spaces have also been wiped out. So with that kind of carnage and with that number of people killed so far, and the fact that the International Criminal Court has said that there, in fact, after an investigation, that there is evidence. Obviously, you're looking at the pictures here. You don't need a lot of specific things to be showing that, yes, this is a genocide by definition of a trapped people. Of course it is. And since we are providing the majority of the weapon systems and the bombs and the missiles and the artillery shells that they're using, you can understand why some would say that we're complicit. And to ignore that and just say no, again, it plays well here. You have Senator Cotton patting Austin on the back there and saying, yeah, you're right, it's not, because they don't count. Well, okay, that works here. It doesn't work everywhere else. It doesn't work on the ground. It doesn't do anything for the innocent people that are being killed on a routine basis over there. And this is all before Netanyahu goes into Rafah, which we're going to talk about in just a second, because that number could go a lot higher very quickly. Now, also, I believe it was yesterday, the president of the United States, Joe Biden, was interviewed on I believe it was a Hispanic channel. And they asked him, hey, is this genocide, and what are you going to do about it? And at least verbally, Biden here implies that he is going to do something about it.
Do you think at this point, Prime Minister Netanyahu is more concerned about his political survival than he is in the national interest of his people?
What I will tell you is I think what he's doing is a mistake. I don't agree with his approach. I think it's outrageous that those three vehicles were hit by drones and taken out on a highway where it wasn't like it was along the shore. It wasn't like there was a convoy moving there, etc. So what I'm calling for is for the Israelis to just call for a ceasefire, allow for the next 6-8 weeks total access to all food and medicine going into the country. I've spoken with everyone from the Saudis to the Jordanians to the Egyptians. They're prepared to move in. They're prepared to move this food in, and I think there's no excuse to not provide for the medical and the food needs of those people.
Now, aside from what he said, there's the optics are not good, because you see there, I mean, he's talking so soft, very slow in his movements. His words are a little bit slurred. Again, you keep hearing this thing come up, and it keeps resurfacing. Just how, I guess, in charge is President Biden, and so how do people take him seriously when they hear these really passive kind of sounding words? Now, the words themselves were fine. And if the U.S. said, yes, we're going to hold Israel to this, we require a 6 to 8 week ceasefire so that we can relieve the suffering and the near starvation level that many of these people are suffering over there. and actually do it, that would be one thing. If he was, said, all right, you're a sovereign nation. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't run Israel, but I can tell you that if you're going to get one more plane load of American bombs, this is going to happen, because until there's a ceasefire, no more plane loads of anything coming across there. That's what I would say if I were president. And that's what he would say. And if he said that, then there would be some change, because Israel doesn't have the capacity to just continue going on with this war month after month without the weapons and ammunition from the United States. Ergo, that's why we get back to the question, was Austin greenlighting this destruction of the people of Palestine? So if Biden meant that, or if he means that, then good on him, and we'll be the first ones to come back and give him credit for that. But the question is, does he mean it? Because so far, we've heard a number of statements from Biden like that, like relating to the two-state solution, relating to an immediate ceasefire before, and nothing has ever followed behind it. In fact, usually you come behind it and you have Netanyahu saying the opposite. Well, this isn't exactly come behind. I think this was the day before, but just notice the impression and the differences between the emphatic and the leadership ability, the projection that you have from Biden, what you just saw, and Netanyahu right here.
קיבלתי היום דיווח מפורט על השיחות בקהיר. אנחנו פועלים כל הזמן להשגת מטרותינו, ובראשן שחרור כל חטופינו, והשגת ניצחון מוחלט על חמאס. הניצחון הזה מחייב כניסה לרפיח וחיסול גדודי הטרור שם. זה יקרה, יש תאריך.
Now, when he says that, I don't have a lot of doubt that he means what he says, that there is a date and he is going into Rafah. He's been saying that for weeks now. But when you look at what Biden said and what Netanyahu said, who do you believe? Which one do you think is going to follow their words with actions? I bet it's going to be Netanyahu. But I'm not giving him a lot of credit for that. I'm just saying he's a lot more forceful to it, because, in fact, I think that he is something, I won't say committing national suicide, but he is definitely undermining his own security, because I think he actually believes that if he, quote, destroys these final 4 battalions of Hamas in Rafah, that somehow he's going to get a win. But, folks, as I just mentioned a second ago, and these pictures you continue to see on the screen here, I assure you that no matter how many people of actual Hamas are left or will ever be left, as long as there are men in this enclave who are being trapped like animals and who are being treated worse than animals, literally they are being fed survival rations, there's nothing but anger and hatred for the Israeli people. So once, quote, Hamas is off the table, what do you think is going to be replacing it? Because something's going to be replacing it. You have to have some sort of political entity just to provide, civil order. There has to be somebody governing an order. You can't just have 2 million people with no police, no civil organization, no ability to have a life. You just can't exist that way. I mean, even if Israel hated them, they still have to provide those somehow. No matter who gets into that position that's Palestinian, they're going to have the same hatred towards Israel that happened before 10/7. I can't reiterate this enough, because it is vital and crucial to understand here. Netanyahu has his people on a path that cannot succeed. They cannot win this war militarily, because the conditions that led to October 7th are being exacerbated beyond belief here. And so the seeds are being planted and watered in blood that will assuredly come back on Israel in one form or another later, unless he makes major changes. And that's where President Biden can help him out against his own interests or against his own will, by helping them come to the conclusion that they have no choice, because we're not going to provide them with the ammunition that they need if they don't do something that makes more sense. So much damage has already been done. It's not like it's going to be reversed, but you can stop building the damage and at least give hope that you might can avoid the worst outcomes. That's what leadership would do right now. And I would love to see some of it. Don't have a lot of hopes for it, but that's where we are. Now, that's what Netanyahu said. And you understand my position. I don't know what that's even going to mean. But there is somebody else who also doesn't think that's a good idea. And it's going to come from a source that you may not expect, especially as many of the things as we put on this channel about former General Ben Hodges, who we've many times shown as just taking some irrational positions on the Russia-Ukraine war. But on this one, the man is spot on.
The thousands of Palestinians who live there are caught here being used as shields by Hamas, but they're being killed by Israeli operations. And the burden is on the Israelis to protect innocent people despite what a terrorist organization is doing. I think that the problem here is that the goal that Prime Minister Netanyahu has set to destroy Hamas is a totally infeasible objective. You cannot destroy a terrorist organization. We tried for 20 years to destroy the Taliban and Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, and we never did it because you have to address the source. What caused an organization like Hamas to come on the scene, and what keeps it going?
Yeah, you see, he was, especially when his commentary that you can't kill your way out of it. You hear me say that a lot. You can't kill your way to peace. Netanyahu isn't going to do it. We didn't do it in Afghanistan. We didn't do it in Iraq. Even during Petraeus' success in 2006, 2007, that wasn't because we killed our way to peace. It was because the Al-Qaeda in Iraq overplayed its hand against the Sunnis that should have been their allies and caused the Sunnis to ask our help to kill the Al-Qaeda, which turned into ISIS later. That only pushed it down the road. Even that didn't stop it. But you see the point. It is graphically played out everywhere. As he said, and as I just pointed out, if you try to kill your way to peace, all you're doing is building future insecurity. That's the very definition of it. So that's what should happen. But almost surely, as they have for the last 6 months, they're going to keep doing it wrong. And we'll have to see this play out. But that's what Israel's going to do. Israel's a sovereign country. They can make their own choices. And all we can do is suggest things and point out the error of their ways if they go down a path. But what are American interests? Because that we do have some control over. And we need to stop this reflexive, hey, whatever they say, we're going to do it, even if we can see it's counterproductive for them and counterproductive for us. Because look, America is already paying a price for what's happened here. Let's be clear on this. And let me point this out for those who may not be aware of it. But so already the U.S. Navy is now engaged in combat operations in the Red Sea because of the Houthis who periodically try to interdict shipping in the area. So now we have to have our ships go in there to keep it safe for all these other nations so that they can transit the Red Sea and go up to the Suez Canal. So, and one of our ships was almost hit with one of these missiles. So far, we haven't had any casualties, but we were within a hair's breadth a month or two ago when one of our ships, the last line of defense, knocked a missile out before it got our ship. And some ships have already been sunk. So this is a continuing thing. So that's now a burden that we have taken on for ourselves. We continue to have troops on the ground in Iraq and in Syria. They do nothing for our country, but they represent a point of strategic vulnerability, which I keep pointing out. And in fact, it finally happened when 3 of those troops were killed a month or two ago, I think back in February, in a retaliation for what's going on in the Gaza Strip. Because some of these Iran-backed groups and co-Arab people are saying, hey, we don't like what's going on here. We can't fight Israel, so we're going to do the next best thing. We're going to fight the people supporting them. That was us. So now then we've had to up our security all over that region, which cost a lot more money, and our troops remain to this day vulnerable to those kinds of attacks. We should get our troops out of there. They do nothing for us except for, again, just wait for one of these guys to get lucky enough and kill another American. It's dumb for us to do that. But that's one of the prices that we're paying here too, because Israel's doing that. Now there's a target on the back of our troops. And if more of those things keep happening, now then we've engaged and we're fighting into Yemen as well against the Houthis. So we're also periodically striking them as a punishment for what happened to our troops in Jordan there, where it's just across the Syrian border. So that's drawing us already deeper into it. Now then we're on the precipice, perhaps, of an even bigger explosion because, again, what Israel did. Now, whatever a week or so ago, Israel attacked a general from the Quds forces, which they claim from Iran is part of behind what happened on 10/7. They claim that they're part of what's going on in Hezbollah with a lot of the shots back and forth across that border that's been going on there really since the beginning. But they did it in a way to create the maximum animosity from Israel. They didn't just take the guy out, the general, they took him out in the embassy. And as we found out subsequently, and it's self-evident, they tracked him all the way in. They blew the building up. They didn't wait till he came out. So they wanted to be an affront to Iran because I think it seems pretty clear to me that they desire Iran to make some big response so that they will be justified in expanding the war. I think that a lot of evidence suggests that Netanyahu just wants to, quote, get rid of all of our problems at once. They want to get rid of the Palestinian problem. They want to get rid of the Hezbollah problem. And they want to get rid of the Iranian problem. They think there's never going to be a better time. Everybody already hates us because of what's happened so far and how we've done in the Strip. So it's not going to get any worse. Let's just take care of this once and for all. So when it's done, at least we finally will have peace. That's what he thinks. But the opposite is almost certainly going to happen. I don't know what Iran's going to do. I've seen, actually, we saw, Gary, if you could put that up. Somebody was tweeting here just a little while before we started this contest here. I'm sorry, for this episode here, it says that the U.S. and allies believe major missile and drone strikes by Iran and its proxies against military and government targets in Israel are imminent. Civilian facilities are not expected to be target, sources told. Attack may not necessarily come from Iran's or Israel's north. So it could come from any number of places, but apparently it's going to be something relatively big, and it's going to definitely strike. So whether it's big, medium, little, that's all in the eye of the beholder. I think it's a pretty good chance that Israel is going to say, no matter what they do, they're going to consider that an escalation and they're going to strike back. And there's some sources out there say that Israel has already targeted potentially their nuclear facilities, the nuclear power facilities in Iran proper. So even if Israel doesn't attack an Israeli embassy in a literal tit for tat, but they go after anything else, and then Israel, in response to that, then goes into Iran proper, then you see that the chances of a regional war just go through the roof. Because will Iran hold back and not attack any more American troops? I don't know. It would be wise for them to withhold that because they don't want to get into a war with the U.S. because we have a lot more firepower than they do. But I assure you, we don't want to get into a war either, because that would be just really horrible for our own interests. We do not need to get into a war. I mean, already we're giving away a lot of artillery shells, millions of them, to Ukraine that we really don't have to get rid of anymore, and some unknown number, because a lot of this is hidden from us from our administration, to Israel. Now, if we suddenly had to start using our own missiles and our own air defense capacity, and at the same time we're giving them away to both Ukraine and Israel, you see, it's not going to be very long before you're going to deplete our inventories. We are not prepared for war. We don't need to do war. We don't need any more war in the Middle East. There's nothing to gain. Absolutely nothing would benefit America to go to war against Iran. Because anybody who has this fiction of thinking, oh, well, that'll finally knock out their nuclear weapons. No, it won't. It'll set them back a while, but that's all it'll do. And unless you invade and conquer the country with, 750,000 or so troops, and they don't exist, nobody has that many, and nor would we even contemplate doing that. No American's going to support that. And if you then think, well, we'll just missile them to death, then you don't understand how war works. And you don't understand how the Iranians will work. What you'll do instead is push them into making a nuclear decision. They have not done it up to this point. But you do something like this, and the chances are very high that Iran will conclude the only thing it can do is to develop a nuclear weapon. And we know they're already have made a lot of progress in having the potential to do it, as it's been briefed many times in the Capitol Hill. So if we want to help push them over the top and actually make them do that, and then really put us in a position to where there'll be a lot of pressure to go to war, folks, it just gets bad to worse. All of this is facilitated by this continual issue of obfuscation, deception, telling a little bit of the truth here, mixing it with some bad analogies over there, all of which to make it sound like what we're doing is something good. But I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you, for very practical reasons, this is going in a direction that is not in American interest. It's not even in Israel's interest. Nobody's going to get peace on this. You have the Palestinian people who are bill paying right now for all the things that are happening. You have the Israeli people even who are paying a big price for a lot of this right now with constant concerns and fear. Now then you want to actually escalate it into Iran and possibly into Hezbollah in the north of the southern part of Lebanon. Many Israelis are talking about that very thing. Not that Hezbollah is going to attack, though they talk about it sometimes too, but maybe even Israel could launch that attack. the bottom line is there's everything bad by more war and nothing good. And it is time for President Biden to man up, do what the president of the United States is supposed to do, and look out for our interests. Our interests are best served by saying, you're either going to require your people to operate your military the same way we require our military to operate. You're going to follow our law that we require of everyone who gets our support, or you're not going to get our support. And I'm tired of this issue where we want to whitewash whatever Israel's doing and say, oh, they're not really violating our law, when they are violating our law. It's black and white. It's so obvious. We have laws on the books that have to do with giving aid to people and human rights. And we always congratulate ourselves with the time we make these laws and say, it's for the greater good. And so it is. The laws are correct, but we're not following them. And because Israel is our friend, we're saying, yeah, we'll give you a pass, and we'll just declare it's not. But that's not in our interest. The reason we have American laws are to protect American interests. We need the president of the United States to again, man up, do the right thing, look out for our interest, and stop just handing Israel what they want or talking a big game and letting Netanyahu walk all over you. I don't want to see either one of those things happen. It is time to stand up. And that is your deep dive for today. Folks, we remain unintimidated and uncompromised, and we're going to keep bringing you the truth. We are going to keep calling out when people are telling you things that aren't true or are only partially true. We're going to call it all out. And again, let me reiterate some of the things I asked you on our last episode. Take this episode and tweet it out. Tag it on to some of the social media of these kinds of people. Go to Senator Cotton and say, Senator Cotton, here's the truth. Here's what's really going on. Go to the Pentagon and when they're tweeting things out, add this to it and say, here's the real truth, so that more people find out the truth. That's the one thing that you can do that can actually make a difference. This is the truth, and we need to share that out to bring light to all kinds of other people so that they're not fooled into supporting something that ultimately will be to our harm. Folks, we have Colonel Jacques Beau on tomorrow. He's going to be talking about some of the origins, actually, of this war in a way that we've not had it before. And you're not going to want to miss that because he always has so much incredible information. That's 11 a.m. tomorrow Eastern time. And then another one of our big favorites, John Mearsheimer, will be on and talking about some of the issues that are going on in the Russia-Ukraine war at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Tune in to see those things, and we will see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.